In the final months of World War II, the German war machine unveiled a legend in steel, the Panzerkampfwagen 8 MAUS. Towering over the battlefield, weighing nearly 188 tons, and armed with a 128mm gun, the MAUS was more than a tank, it was a moving fortress. Soldiers whispered tales of its unstoppable power. One hit could destroy a building, one shell could wipe out a platoon. Yet behind the metal colossus was a vulnerability. Its massive size made it slow and unwieldy. On a quiet, war-torn morning, a different story began to unfold, a story where brains would challenge brawn. Far across the ruined fields of Eastern Europe, a small, battered T-34 glided through the debris of destroyed villages. Its crew had seen the MAUS from afar, a looming shadow crawling along the horizon. "It's massive, impossible to stop," whispered the young commander, clutching his worn map. The T-34's strength wasn't in armor, nor in brute firepower. It was speed, cunning, and adaptability. The crew knew they could not meet the MAUS head-on. Their only chance was to outthink it, to turn its own size against it, and use the battlefield to their advantage. The MAUS advanced slowly, crushing the road beneath its tracks. Trees splintered, artillery bounced harmlessly off its armor, and the ground trembled under each step. The T-34's crew darted from cover to cover, using ruined walls, craters, and broken bridges to stay invisible. "Wait for the angle," whispered the gunner, eyes fixed on the looming monster. Every movement had to be precise. One mistake could mean annihilation. The battle wasn't just mechanical, it was a tense psychological game. The MAUS represented ultimate fear, yet the T-34 represented hope, ingenuity, and survival. The first engagement was a test of nerves. The T-34 fired, and the shells ricocheted harmlessly off the MAUS's impenetrable front armor. The giant turret slowly swung, trying to track the tiny target, but its slow rotation was its weakness. "We can't take it straight," muttered the commander. The T-34 slipped through alleyways, weaving around debris, slowly positioning for a strategic strike. Each maneuver tested the crew's skill, their understanding of terrain, and their nerves. The colossal MAUS, built for unstoppable destruction, was about to meet a battlefield far more cunning than brute force. The battle escalated as the MAUS neared a narrow bridge spanning a deep, destroyed riverbed. The T-34's crew saw their opportunity. "Lead it onto the bridge," the commander ordered. The MAUS rumbled forward, unaware that the very bridge would become its trap. Its colossal weight cracked the supports, jolting the massive machine and slowing its progress. Dust and smoke filled the air, and the T-34 skated to a hidden flank. From there, they aimed at the tracks and rear armor, vulnerabilities the mighty tank could not protect. Patience, cunning, and precision were their weapons now. The MAUS struggled. Its crew inside shouted orders, panic creeping into their voices. Every movement required massive coordination, and the narrow bridge turned each maneuver into a perilous gamble. Outside, the T-34 fired calculated shots, exploiting every weak point. One hit dented armor, another cracked a track. Smoke rose from damaged components, and for the first time, the invincible giant hesitated. The battlefield became a chessboard, with the small, nimble T-34 controlling the pace. Brains had begun to outmatch sheer power in a contest that would decide survival or destruction. Minutes stretched into eternity as the T-34 danced around the trapped MAUS, firing from impossible angles. Inside the giant tank, the German crew struggled to respond. "It's everywhere! Too fast!" cried the gunner. Their massive gun could obliterate houses, yet it could barely hit a moving speck weaving through rubble. Each hit from the T-34, though small in comparison, compounded the MAUS's problems. Damaged tracks, compromised engines, and the growing realization that size and strength were no longer enough. The monster that had inspired fear was now vulnerable to ingenuity and skill. With repeated, precise strikes, the MAUS ground to a halt. Its tracks buckled, its engine smoked, and the bridge groaned beneath its weight. The T-34 fired a final shot into a weakened rear panel, and the colossal tank froze. Silence fell across the battlefield, broken only by distant artillery and the T-34's cautious breathing. The victory was not one of raw firepower, but of strategy, courage, and clever thinking. The tiny tank had triumphed over the monster, proving that even the most formidable weapon could be defeated by patience, intelligence, and battlefield awareness. The T-34 crew cautiously approached their adversary, eyes wide at the sheer scale of the MAUS. Its towering hull, massive turret, and monstrous gun now seemed almost fragile under the light of strategy and clever tactics. Soldiers in the surrounding fields whispered in awe. How could such a small, nimble tank conquer the ultimate war machine? The battle had transformed from a contest of metal into a story of human ingenuity. It was a lesson in humility for engineers and soldiers alike. Even unstoppable monsters have weaknesses if only one has the mind to exploit them. The MAUS, despite its legendary status, remained a symbol of ambition and engineering extremes. Yet in this encounter, real or imagined, it revealed its fatal flaws. Its size, speed, and reliance on sheer firepower had made it an easy target for clever, determined opponents. The T-34's victory became more than a tactical triumph. It became a testament to human intelligence, courage, and coordination. The story resonated far beyond the battlefield, a legend for all generations about how brains, strategy, and daring could triumph over seemingly invincible strength. Beyond the clash itself, this story illustrates the psychology of war. The sight of a MAUS could freeze soldiers in fear, but the clever use of terrain, timing, and tactical thinking could transform terror into opportunity. The T-34 crew, though small and underpowered, demonstrated calm, coordination, and boldness. Each decision, when to move, when to fire, which route to take, was a life-or-death gamble. In that fragile balance, the tiny tank's agility and wit turned the battlefield into a proving ground for human skill, proving that in war, strategy often outweighs size. The encounter also highlights the limitations of superweapons. Hitler's obsession with creating an unstoppable tank yielded the MAUS, a marvel of armor and firepower, yet impractical in reality. Its size hindered mobility, and it required careful conditions to operate. Meanwhile, the T-34's design philosophy emphasized flexibility, speed, and ease of operation. The contrast couldn't be starker. One represented ambition without adaptability, the other humble yet lethal efficiency. The story of their confrontation offers a timeless lesson for engineers, strategists, and historians alike. As the dust settled, the battlefield bore witness to the paradox of warfare. Colossal might was no match for cunning and coordination. The MAUS, a legend of engineering, now lay immobilized, a hulking reminder that ambition alone cannot guarantee victory. The T-34 crew, exhausted but triumphant, had turned the tides with strategy, patience, and nerve. For observers, the encounter became more than a clash of machines. It became a dramatic tale of survival, intelligence, and courage. The legend of the tiny tank defeating the monster lives on as one of World War II's most thrilling hypotheticals. Finally, the MAUS remained an icon of war, even in defeat. Its construction, unmatched in scale and ambition, inspired awe and fear. Yet, the encounter with the small, clever T-34 proved an enduring truth. No machine, no matter how massive or powerful, is invincible. In war, intellect, timing, and daring can level any battlefield. For viewers today, this story combines historical intrigue with suspenseful drama, allowing us to imagine the unimaginable and learn from the past. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest can outmaneuver the mightiest. The dust settled over the shattered bridge, and the T-34 crew exhaled in exhaustion. For a moment, it seemed the battle was over.
The giant MAUS immobilized, a hissing, smoking colossus. But the war was far from finished. From the horizon, the thunder of tracks echoed. More enemy armor approached. Another group of T-34s and a few battered Shermans emerged from the ruined village, their commanders aware that the MAUS's destruction or survival could turn the tide. The tiny heroes now faced a massive challenge: how to outwit a tank that seemed invincible in every way.
The MAUS groaned and shifted slightly, as if awakening from a nap, its turret creaking while the German crew inside shouted over the roar of engines. "We're not finished yet," one whispered, eyes scanning the battlefield. Every move was perilous. One misstep, and the weight of 188 tons could crush them all. Meanwhile, the T-34 commanders communicated through hand signals and short radio bursts, planning coordinated strikes. The smaller tanks moved like shadows between ruined houses and craters, positioning to exploit the giants' limited mobility. The battle had become a game of nerves, strategy, and split-second timing. First wave of the tiny tanks darted forward, skirting around the MAUS to hit its exposed rear armor. Shells pinged off in places, smoke rose from minor hits, and the colossal machine staggered slightly under the cumulative impact. Inside, the German crew struggled to respond. Their massive main gun could obliterate buildings, but aiming at nimble, fast-moving targets in tight ruins was nearly impossible. The T-34s and Shermans used every trick: false retreats, feigned flanks, and sudden charges to confuse the monster. The MAUS was powerful, yes, but every movement took time, and every hesitation was an opportunity. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Dust hung thick, smoke from burning vehicles and shattered buildings blurred visibility. Craters gaped where shells had struck, and the ground trembled under the MAUS's weight with each slow advance. The small tanks moved like wraiths, darting in and out of ruined streets, coordinating attacks with astonishing precision. "Left flank, now!" shouted a T-34 commander. One Sherman veered suddenly into the MAUS's side, firing high explosive rounds at a vulnerable track. The colossal tank lurched, nearly tipping on uneven terrain. The tiny heroes were turning fear into strategy, turning the giant's power against itself. Inside the MAUS, panic began to seep through the German crew. The engineer shouted over the rumble, "We can't maneuver here! The bridge won't hold!" Their commander tried to calm the crew, but tension was palpable. Outside, the T-34s and Shermans observed the limitations of their enemy with awe and disbelief. The MAUS's immense size, once a symbol of invincibility, was now a cage, restricting every turn and every shot. The smaller tanks exploited this mercilessly, firing at the tracks, weak panels, and engine vents. Every hit, though minor compared to the main gun, chipped away at the giant's dominance. Then came the moment of daring. One T-34, barely scraping the edge of visibility, maneuvered behind a ruined wall and fired a carefully calculated shell into the MAUS's rear engine compartment. Smoke burst out in thick plumes, and the massive machine shuddered violently. Another Sherman flanked the other side, targeting the weakened track, while a T-34 coordinated fire from the front, forcing the turret to rotate sluggishly and waste precious time. The giant, hitherto unstoppable, now staggered under the pressure of its smaller adversaries. It was a war of precision, cunning, and nerve, not raw power. The air was thick with tension. Dust, smoke, and the smell of burning fuel created a surreal battlefield. The small tanks worked in unison, anticipating each move the MAUS made. Every roar of its engine, every creak of its turret was a signal to the T-34s and Shermans to adjust and strike. From the MAUS's interior, the crew yelled orders, frustration and disbelief written across every face. For all its strength, the giant was trapped by terrain, time, and human ingenuity. The tiny heroes had learned its patterns, its limitations, and used them ruthlessly. The climax approached.
The immense MAUS, already impaired, attempted a desperate charge to regain momentum. Its immense gun turned sluggishly, trying to sweep the small tanks away. But the T-34s darted in coordinated flurries, drawing its fire while other tanks struck from hidden angles. One Sherman fired a high explosive round at a damaged section near the engine, smoke and sparks exploding outward. The ground trembled, metal screeched, and the monster shuddered. It was an epic spectacle. Sheer power meeting unmatched strategy, a clash between size and agility, horror and courage, despair and hope. Finally, the MAUS ground to a near halt. Tracks damaged, engine failing, turret misaligned, the colossal tank was crippled. The small tanks maintained pressure, keeping the giant pinned in place. The T-34 and Sherman crews, exhausted but resolute, took a moment to breathe, surveying the battlefield strewn with debris, smoke, and the echoes of their daring maneuvers. Victory was not clean, not glorious in the traditional sense, but it was real. Brains and teamwork had defeated brawn. For once, the unstoppable had been stopped, not by firepower, but by courage, cunning, and relentless precision. As the dust settled, the survivors approached the immobilized MAUS with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Its towering hull, massive turret, and legendary main gun still cast a shadow over the field, but the mighty machine no longer moved. Inside, the German crew knew defeat, not in death, but in the failure to overcome an enemy they had underestimated. The T-34s and Shermans, battered and exhausted, celebrated quietly, understanding the cost of victory. Strategy, coordination, and bravery had triumphed over overwhelming force, creating a story that would echo far beyond the battlefield. The aftermath was a lesson in both engineering and human psychology. The MAUS remained one of the most impressive tanks ever constructed, yet it had vulnerabilities that clever opponents could exploit. Speed, coordination, and understanding of terrain had turned its greatest strengths into liabilities. The small tanks, nimble and brave, demonstrated the essence of wartime ingenuity, using what you have, where you are, against what seems unbeatable. The field, littered with wreckage, smoke, and craters, bore witness to the clash of titans and the triumph of human skill. The story of the MAUS and the tiny heroes became a legend among soldiers and historians alike. It was a testament to the paradox of war. Sheer power alone does not guarantee victory. The giant, feared and revered, was halted by strategy and courage. The small tanks, outnumbered and outgunned, leveraged mobility, intelligence, and daring. This encounter, though dramatized, highlights a timeless lesson. In war, brains often outweigh brawn, planning can defeat strength, and courage can turn desperation into triumph. Every crew member had contributed to an unforgettable chapter in tank warfare. Even decades later, the image of the MAUS immobilized by nimble adversaries captivates enthusiasts and historians. The story inspires awe for both technological ambition and human ingenuity. The colossal tank, a marvel of engineering, now served as a cautionary tale. No machine, however advanced, is invincible. The small heroes, T-34s and Shermans, remind us that clever tactics, adaptability, and bravery can overturn the impossible. The legend of the tiny tanks defeating the giant MAUS remains a thrilling example of strategy, determination, and the unpredictable nature of war. In the end, the MAUS's legacy was twofold: a symbol of Germany's ambition and a reminder of the limitations of sheer size. The small, determined tanks had reshaped the battlefield, proving that coordination and ingenuity are as lethal as firepower. The ruined bridge, the cratered fields, and the immobilized giant stood as testament to the clash of extremes. For viewers today, the story is more than history. It is cinematic,
emotional and instructive, a tale of courage, intellect, and the extraordinary lengths ordinary machines and crews could go to triumph against the odds.